Please don't open it until I'm ready. The words were whispered in the dark. A child's voice fragile as glass. Crayons scraped against peeling wallpaper. The faint smell of wax thick in the air. Emma Dawson crouched in the corner of her bedroom, her small hand moving quickly, pressing deep strokes of red and black against the wall. The glow of her nightlight flickered, catching the strange shape she was creating. An archway, crooked and uneven, but unmistakably a door. She stepped back, golden curls falling into her face, and smiled at her work. The handle she'd drawn seemed to glisten unnaturally in the half-light, though no crayon should have been able to shine like that. "See, Mommy?" she whispered to no one in particular. Now he can come through. Across the hall, Claire Dawson rubbed her temples, exhaustion carving heavy shadows beneath her eyes. The diner shift had left her body aching, and the silence of the apartment should have felt like relief. But tonight it didn't. Tonight, the silence was wrong. A faint dragging noise reached her ears, the scrape of crayon on plaster. She frowned, pushing away from the kitchen table littered with overdue bills. "Emma," she called softly. No answer. When she stepped into her daughter's room, the air felt heavier somehow. Emma stood before the wall, small shoulders squared, head tilted. "What are you doing?" Claire asked, trying to keep the sharpness out of her voice. Emma turned, her blue eyes wide with seriousness that felt far too old for her 6 years. "I'm finishing the door?" Claire blinked. "The door?" "To the place where Daddy went," Emma said matter-of-factly. "He needs a way back." Claire's stomach tightened. The room felt colder, though the radiator hissed on. "Sweetheart," she said carefully, crouching low. "Daddy can't come back, remember? We talked about that." Emma nodded slowly, almost absently, her gaze drifting back to the crude door drawn in wax. "I know. But someone else is on the other side. I can hear them sometimes. They're waiting." The silence that followed was suffocating. Claire swallowed, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "It's late. Come on, back to bed." But when she reached for the crayon box, Emma's small hand shot out, gripping her wrist with startling force. "Don't erase it," she whispered, voice trembling with urgency. "Please, Mommy." "Not yet." For a moment, Claire saw something flicker across her daughter's face. Fear, yes, but also hope. It unsettled her more than the drawing itself. "All right," she said quietly, easing Emma toward the bed. "We'll leave it. Just sleep now, okay?" Emma crawled beneath the covers, clutching her worn, stuffed rabbit, her eyes never leaving the crayon door. Claire switched off the lamp, lingering in the doorway longer than usual. She wanted to believe this was only a child's imagination, nothing more. But as she shut the door behind her, the nightlight flickered again. And in that dim glow, for the briefest second, the crayon handle seemed to turn. The next morning, Emma was up early. Crayons were scattered around her like fallen soldiers on the bedroom floor. She sketched furiously in her notebook, page after page filled with crooked houses, uneven suns, and figures that stretched taller than they should. But always, always, the same thing: doors. At breakfast, she pushed her cereal around the bowl, humming under her breath. Claire poured coffee, watching her daughter with unease. "Emma, why doors? Why not flowers or animals like the other kids draw?" Emma shrugged, spoon clinking against the bowl. "Because doors are where people hide. Some doors open, some stay closed. But they're all waiting." Her tone was so casual, so certain, it made Claire's skin crawl. Later, as Claire rushed to get ready for work, Emma padded into the living room, notebook clutched tight. She taped one of her new drawings to the wall near the window. Claire caught a glimpse. Before leaving, the same arch, the same crooked handle. But this one had something different. Faint lines beneath it, stretching outward like shadows. That night, when Claire tucked Emma in, she paused at the sight of her daughter's wall again. The wax lines looked darker than before, almost etched into the plaster instead of sitting on the surface. She touched the drawing lightly with her fingertips. The crayon felt warm. Emma stirred. "Don't touch it, Mommy." Claire froze. "It's not for you," Emma added softly, half asleep. By the end of the week, Claire was rattled enough to bring it up with Mrs. Ramirez, Emma's teacher. "She keeps drawing doors," Claire said quietly after school, her voice low so Emma wouldn't overhear. "It's obsessive," Mrs. Ramirez pursed her lips thoughtfully. "Children process grief in unusual ways. Perhaps this is her way of It doesn't feel like grief. Claire cut in, more sharply than she intended. It feels like she believes they're real. The teacher hesitated, then leaned closer. Sometimes imagination can feel real for a child. But as long as she's safe, Claire glanced past her to where Emma was skipping along the edge of the playground. For a moment, the sun caught her hair and her shadow stretched unnaturally long, too tall for her small frame. Claire blinked, heart stuttering. But when she looked again, the shadow was normal. Safe, she repeated faintly. That night, Emma didn't ask for a bedtime story. She only asked one thing. Mommy, if the door opens, will you hold my hand? Claire smiled tightly, brushing curls from her daughter's forehead. Of course. But doors don't really open, sweetheart. Emma closed her eyes, whispering as she drifted into sleep. Some do. Claire sat awake for hours after, staring at the faint outline of the crayon door in the darkened room. She told herself it was only a drawing, only wax pressed into plaster. But deep inside, she wasn't so sure anymore, because sometimes, in the silence between Emma's breaths, she thought she heard it, faint knocking, muffled and patient, from the other side. The following morning began like any other, rain streaking. The apartment windows, toast slightly burnt, the hum of the kettle filling the silence. But to Claire, nothing felt normal anymore. Every time her eyes landed on Emma's bedroom wall, she swore the drawn door looked darker, sharper, as though the lines had deepened overnight. She didn't mention it. Didn't dare. Can I take my notebook to school? Emma asked, chewing. On her lip as she tugged at her backpack zipper, Claire hesitated. Why, sweetheart? Don't you want to leave your drawings here? Emma shook her head. I have to show him the new door. The one with the silver handle. Claire froze. Show who? Emma smiled like it was obvious. The man waiting. He's getting closer. Her spoon clattered into her coffee cup. Emma, Claire said firmly, crouching down so she was eye level. You know that's pretend. Right? Nobody's waiting behind a crayon door. It's just your imagination. But Emma's blue eyes only softened, patient and unshaken. You'll see. At school, Mrs. Ramirez pulled Claire aside again, concern etched across her features. She's not disruptive, the teacher reassured quickly. In fact, she's quiet. Too quiet sometimes. But she's been drawing more doors. Different. Kinds. Always doors. Claire's throat tightened. And the other kids? They're starting to notice, Mrs. Ramirez admitted. One little boy asked her what was behind them. Emma told him he shouldn't ask unless he wanted to lose his shadow. Claire's blood went cold. When she picked Emma up that afternoon, she tried to keep her tone light. Lose your shadow? What did you mean by that? Emma swung her backpack carelessly, humming. Shadows tell secrets. If you don't have one, you can't hide. Her mother's hand trembled as she unlocked the car. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Claire sat alone at the kitchen table with her daughter's notebook. She had sworn not to pry, but she couldn't resist. Page after page showed variations of the same thing. Some doors were simple rectangles, some tall and arched, some with heavy iron locks drawn in thick black strokes, but all of them were shaded, in such a way that they seemed to sink into the paper like real entrances. On one page, Claire paused. A tall building, maybe meant to be their apartment complex. At the bottom, Emma had sketched herself, small and smiling. Beside her stood another figure, broad, faceless, but clearly not Claire or Daniel. A heavy shadow spilled beneath his drawn feet, longer and darker than all the others. In bold, uneven, crayon strokes Emma had written beneath it. He stays. Claire's hands shook as she closed the book. That night, the sound woke her again. A faint, deliberate knock. 3 times. She bolted upright in bed, her heart hammering. The apartment was still. No footsteps, no voices. But the sound had been real. She knew it. She crept into Emma's room, bare feet silent on the cold floorboards. The nightlight glowed faintly, throwing shadows across the walls. And there it was. The door. The same crayon arch, the crooked handle. Her breath caught. Because the handle wasn't crooked anymore. It was straighter now, smoother, more real. Emma, Claire whispered, voice trembling. The little girl stirred, rubbing her eyes. Did you hear that? Emma blinked at her, then rolled over with a sleepy smile. He's just knocking, so I know he's still there. Don't worry, Mommy. He won't come in unless I let him. Claire's skin crawled. She backed out of the room, clutching the door frame like a lifeline. The next day, Claire confided in Daniel, her older son. He was 14, all restless limbs and impatience, headphones permanently slung around his neck. "She's scaring me," Claire admitted, voice low as they walked home from the bus stop. "These drawings, this talk about doors, it's getting worse." Daniel rolled his eyes. "She's just a kid, Mom. Kids say weird stuff all the time." She says there's someone waiting behind it. That made him pause. "Someone?" "Yes," Claire said, her voice shaking. "And last night I swear I saw the drawing change." Daniel snorted, half nervous, half dismissive. "You're tired. You work too much. She's just messing with you." But when they reached the apartment and Daniel peeked into Emma's room, his smirk faltered. The door wasn't just drawn in crayon anymore. The black lines shimmered faintly, as if damp with ink. The handle caught the dim light, glinting like something metallic. Daniel stepped back quickly, muttering, "Okay, that's creepy." Claire's face paled. Exactly. That night, Claire moved Emma's bed into her own room, insisting it was for fun. Emma didn't resist. She curled happily beside her stuffed rabbit, whispering as sleep claimed her. "He's patient, Mommy. He knows I'll open it soon." Claire lay awake long after, staring into the dark. The apartment creaked. The radiator hissed. And then, just as her eyelids grew heavy, 3 knocks. This time louder, closer. Her heart pounded as she realized it hadn't come from Emma's room. It had come from the wall just beyond her own bed. Claire barely slept that night. The knocking had echoed in her head long after it stopped, each dull thud seeming to rattle the walls of her chest. When dawn broke, she rose stiff and trembling, her eyes burning with fatigue. Emma, in contrast, seemed radiant. She hopped down from Claire's bed, barefoot and humming, as though the night had been peaceful. She picked up her notebook and turned to a fresh page. Her crayons spilled across the table like an orchestra preparing for a symphony. Claire tried to sound steady. "What are you drawing now, sweetheart?" Emma's little hands moved quickly, bold lines streaking across the page. "The inside," she said simply. Claire's stomach turned. "The inside of what?" Emma looked up, her smile serene. "The door." When Daniel came home from school that afternoon, Claire pulled him aside. "You heard it too, right?" she asked. Her voice was urgent, brittle. Daniel pulled off his headphones, eyes narrowing. "The knocking?" "Yes." He hesitated, then nodded once. "Yeah. But walls make sounds. Pipes, radiators. This wasn't pipes, Daniel." Claire's hands tightened around the dish towel. It was knocking. 3 knocks. The same as Emma says. Daniel shoved his hands into his pockets. He looked younger then, unsure, caught between wanting to dismiss it and knowing he couldn't. "So, what do you want me to do? Burn the wall?" Claire almost laughed, but the sound died in her throat. "Just keep an eye on her, please." Daniel didn't argue. But when he went to check on Emma, he stood frozen at her doorway. She had drawn another door. This one was different, arched, with heavy hinges, almost medieval in design. And inside the dark outline, faint streaks of gray swirled like smoke. "Emma," he said slowly, "why do you keep drawing these?" The little girl turned her head, her curls falling into her face. "Because he shows me how." Daniel's breath caught. "Who?" She blinked at him as though the answer were obvious. "The man waiting." That night, Daniel decided he wasn't afraid. He was 14, too old for ghost stories, too old for nonsense about shadows. But when the clock crept toward midnight, he found himself sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall, and then, knock, knock, knock. He leapt up, heart hammering. The sound came not from his wall, but from Emma's room down the hall. He bolted toward it, flinging the door open. Emma sat wide awake on her bed, staring at the crayon door. Her eyes were unblinking, her stuffed rabbit clutched tightly in her lap. "Did you hear it?" she whispered. Daniel's throat felt dry. "Yeah, I heard it." Emma nodded, satisfied. "He wants me to open it, but not yet. He says not yet." Daniel crossed the room, gripping her shoulders. "Emma, listen to me. There's no one there. It's just a wall." But as he said it, he could swear the drawn door shimmered. The handle, sketched in gray crayon, glinted faintly like steel. The next morning, Claire found Daniel pale and shaken. "You look like you saw a ghost," she said. He didn't meet her eyes. "Maybe I did." Claire's chest tightened. She wanted to deny it, to scold him for encouraging Emma's imagination, but the truth was gnawing at her too. The doors weren't fading with time. They were getting stronger. When Emma left for school, Claire stormed into her room, yanked the posters from the walls, and scrubbed at the crayon lines with a wet rag. She scrubbed until her arms ached, until the water turned black with color, and when she finally stepped back, panting, the wall was clean. For the first time in weeks. She felt relief until that night, when Emma walked into the kitchen, notebook in hand, and placed it gently on the table. The page showed the same wall Claire had scrubbed. Clean. Blank. But across the surface, in Emma's shaky crayon lines, the door had returned. Perfect, solid, and whole. "He doesn't like when you try to erase him," Emma whispered. Claire reached her breaking point. The next day, she pulled Mrs. Ramirez aside after school. "Is there a counselor Emma can talk to? Maybe someone who understands children who've lost a parent?" Mrs. Ramirez hesitated. "Of course, but Claire?" She bit her lip, glancing toward Emma, who was happily swinging her legs on a bench. "I don't think this is just grief. The other children, they're starting to say they hear knocking too." Claire's blood ran cold. "What?" "Yesterday during quiet reading," Mrs. Ramirez said. 3 students swore they heard someone knocking on the classroom wall. They laughed it off. But then Emma told them not to laugh. She said the man behind the door doesn't like being ignored. Claire's legs threatened to give out. That evening, Daniel confronted her. "Mom, we can't pretend anymore. I saw it." It moved. His voice cracked. The handle turned. Just a little. But it turned. Claire wanted to tell him he was wrong, that it was exhaustion, that they were all losing their minds. But when she looked at his pale face, she couldn't lie. Because she had seen it too. The door wasn't staying still anymore. It was waiting, and Emma was the key. That night, Claire tried to stay awake, but sleep claimed her, and in the quiet dark, she dreamed. She stood in front of the wall. The door loomed before her, not drawn but carved from black wood, its surface pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The handle gleamed silver. From the other side came a voice, low, measured, terrifyingly. "Calm, let me in." Claire jolted awake, drenched in sweat. From down the hall came the sound of Emma's soft footsteps, and then, knock, knock, knock. Louder than ever. This time it wasn't asking, it was demanding. The house was suffocatingly still. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a warning. Claire sat rigid on the couch, staring down the hallway toward Emma's room. She wanted to believe it was just a child's imagination, just grief twisted into something strange. But the knocking had grown too real, too loud. Daniel sat beside her, pale and restless. His fingers drummed against his knees, but his eyes never left Emma's closed bedroom door. "If it tries again," he whispered, "we have to stop her." Claire nodded, but her throat tightened. "How? Do you stop something you don't understand?" At midnight it came. Knock, knock, knock. The sound reverberated through the walls, rattling picture frames and shaking Claire's bones. Emma's door creaked open, and the little girl stepped out, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Her eyes glistened in the dim light, wide but unafraid. "It's time," she said simply. Claire rushed forward, kneeling. "No, Emma, you can't open it. Whatever's there, it isn't safe." Emma tilted her head. "He said it's not for me. It's for you." The words struck Claire like a blow. The family moved together into Emma's room. The door loomed on the wall, clearer than ever. Before, its lines too sharp to be made of crayon, the handle gleamed, real and metallic, reflecting the faint light of the bedside lamp. Claire grabbed Emma, pulling her close. "Don't touch it. Don't listen." But Emma shook her head gently. "Mommy, he's been knocking because you're the one who won't open. He says he's been waiting a long time." The air thickened. Claire's heart raced. "Who's been waiting?" And then the voice. Deep. Calm. Filling the room though no mouth spoke. "You know me, Claire." The walls seemed to pulse. The air tasted like copper. Claire's lips parted, her voice cracking. "Michael." Daniel jerked his head toward her. "Dad?" Claire's vision blurred. She could barely breathe. Michael, her husband. The man they lost years ago in a car accident. The man she had buried, mourned, and tried to forget. Emma's little hand pressed against her arm. I told you he was real. The knocking stopped. Silence pressed in, heavier than the sound. Then the handle began to turn. Claire screamed, grabbing a chair and slamming it against the wall. You're gone, she cried. You don't belong here. But when the chair struck, it didn't hit plaster. It hit wood. Solid wood. The sound reverberated like thunder. Daniel stumbled backward, eyes wide. It's real. The door's real. Emma stepped closer, calm in the chaos. He says he just wants to come back. Claire's tears burned hot. No, that's not him. That's not your father. It's something else wearing his voice. The air grew colder. The shadows in the eye. Corners deepened, stretching across the walls toward the door. Claire, the voice rumbled, you left me there. Don't you want us whole again? Emma reached for the handle. Claire lunged, pulling her back. No, sweetheart, it's not him. Daddy's gone. He loved us, but he's gone. Emma trembled, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. But I just wanted him to stay. The shadows writhed, pressing closer. The door rattled violently, as though whatever waited behind it was pushing forward. Daniel grabbed Emma's rabbit and thrust it into her arms. Think about Dad, he pleaded. Not about what's behind there, about what he really was. He wouldn't knock like this. He wouldn't scare us. Emma sobbed into the stuffed toy. The sound was small, broken, but real. And slowly, the rattling stilled, the voice softened. Emma, open the door and I'll never leave you again. Claire held her daughter's face, forcing her to look into her eyes. Baby, love doesn't come with knocking. It comes with staying, even when the door is closed. The real daddy. He's already inside us. We don't need that door. Emma's hands shook as she pulled away from the handle. She whispered, Then he can't stay. The shadows recoiled. The walls seemed to breathe. A long exhale of despair. And then with a scream of splintering sound, the door collapsed inward, revealing only blackness beyond. A void so deep it seemed to swallow light. Claire pulled both children against her, bracing for whatever came. But nothing did. The blackness shivered once, then folded in on itself, erasing the door as though it had never been. Only the blank wall remained. For a long time, none of them spoke. Finally, Emma whispered, Is he gone? Claire smoothed her daughter's curls. Yes, sweetheart. He's gone. Daniel looked shaken but resolute. Then why does it feel like he's still watching? Claire didn't answer. She didn't know. Days passed. The drawing stopped. Emma taped new pictures to her walls. Smiling suns, crooked houses, her family of 3. No shadows. But sometimes, in the quiet hours of night, Claire would walk past Emma's room and feel a chill under the door. A faint draft, as if air was leaking from somewhere it shouldn't. One evening, she found a crayon on the floor, broken in half. Black, worn down to a nub. She picked it up with trembling fingers, staring at it until Daniel's voice startled her. Mom, he said quietly, do you think he's really gone? Claire forced herself to smile. Yes. But when she turned away, she wasn't sure. Weeks later, Emma drew again. A simple picture this time. Her brother, and her mom. But in the far corner, half hidden, in gray stood a 4th figure. It didn't have a face, and behind it stretched a shadow.